years, Joe Breeze and Charlie Kelly have been bombing down trails on mountain bikes. Their bikes are state-of-the-art back and front suspension shock absorbers, precise click shifting, and clipless pedals. But it wasn't always this way, and Breeze and Kelly would know. They were some of the people who first developed commercial mountain bikes in the late 1970s.
What I had in the 70s was a goofy hobby that I shared with a few of my friends like Joe and Gary and some others.
That goofy hobby upended the bike industry, ushered in a new Olympic sport, and reacquainted millions with the simple joy of riding. Breeze, Kelly, and other cyclists in Northern California began modifying old paperboy delivery bikes like this 1941 Schwinn for off-road use.
We discarded the fenders and the chain guard and got the bike down to a nice felt 50 pounds.
Some added front brakes and eventually multiple gearing. They called them clunkers, and in 1976, Kelly started organizing races down the slopes of nearby Mount Tamalpais on a steep, twisting run they called repack.
Well, we were on those old coaster brakes at first, and by the time you got to the bottom, the grease would have burnt into a contrail of smoke, and you'd have to go home and repack your hub, hence the name.
Racing was incredibly hard on the bikes.
I was breaking a lot of those frames. It just seemed like the price of 2 or 3 of those frames that I was shattering should be enough to pay for somebody to build me one that wouldn't shatter.
So Kelly asked Breeze, a bike builder, to make him a sturdier machine from scratch.
That bike, only 10 of them made, and they changed the world.
That bike, Kelly's Breezer No. 2, is on display at the new Marin Museum of Bicycling and Mountain Bike Hall of Fame.
You can see that it has these twin laterals that go from the head tube down to the rear dropout to try to make the frame more rigid.
Breeze designed the bike to be strong enough to handle the dozens of high-speed turns on Mount Tam, and it set off a revolution in bike design and use.
The diamond frame really is the best way to do it. But in retrospect, I'm really happy I did those twin laterals because it makes those first 10 Breezers very noticeable.
Word of this goofy hobby was getting out.
The first published story, February 1978, California bikies are mountainside surfing.
Others wanted in on the fun, and they needed bikes too.
Our initial goal wasn't to make an industry out of this. We were just having fun in the woods.
Soon, mountain bikes were a cottage industry. Tom Ritchie's fillet brazed frames soon followed. At the same time, Charlie Cunningham was developing the first lightweight aluminum bikes. His ideas, including drop-style handlebars for off-road, were decades ahead of their time. Kelly and business partner Gary Fisher began selling Ritchie-built frames as mountain bikes. The name stuck, even though their trademark didn't.
Not that many people get to put words in the dictionary, and we did.
Ritchie frames were also the inspiration for Specialized stump jumpers, the first mass-produced and mass-advertised mountain bikes.
It's not just a new bicycle, it's a whole new sport. Competitors like Trek and Cannondale are going, oh my gosh, if we don't get into this right now, we're going to be left in the dust.
Soon, millions were taking to the trails and streets on these new bikes.
The mountain bike put people on bikes that had never ridden before.
By the late 1980s, motorcycle designs were finding their way into bikes as well. The RockShox front suspension fork debuted in 1989. Full suspension and disc brakes weren't far behind, with machines like the Gary Fisher RS1. Today, Breeze is still designing Breezer mountain bikes. And Kelly recently published a book on the origins of the sport.
Oh, well, it'll be 40 years this fall since we started racing at Repack, and it was really the racing that spurred everything else. The race just started us on this journey that we're still on.